The phone rang on a cold December afternoon, breaking the silence of the small adobe house in Tlaxcala. Carmen Alvarado, her hands marked by decades of work, answered hurriedly. "Mom? It's me, Hugo." Her son's voice warmed her heart like the embers of a bonfire. Carmen smiled, pressing the device against her wrinkled face. "My son, how wonderful to hear you. I want you to come to the Posadas this year, Mom. Ana Sofia is preparing everything. The children keep asking about their grandmother." Carmen felt her eyes fill with tears. 5 years since the last visit. 5 long winters in solitude. "I'll be there, son. I'll definitely be there." When she hung up, she ran to her room with an energy she hadn't felt in years. She opened the old wardrobe that smelled of mothballs and took out the embroidered sweater she had finished months before, blue like Hugo's eyes, decorated with traditional patterns she had learned from her own mother. At the bottom of the wardrobe, a shoebox contained photographs yellowed by time. Among them, Hugo at 15, smiling, with a glass of Christmas punch in his hands. Carmen stroked the image, remembering. "How much I sacrificed to see you smile like that," she whispered to the photograph. "How many early mornings in the textile factory, how many nights selling tamales in the market. Every penny had been spent so Hugo could study at UNAM. Every hour of work, a brick in the construction of his future. A future away from her, in the capital." In the kitchen, Carmen organized jars of guava jam she had prepared in the summer. She added 3 jars of pickled chilies, a recipe that Ana Sofia had praised so much. "Maybe this way she'll accept me better," Carmen thought, remembering her daughter-in-law's distant look during her last visits. "Perhaps then they'll see me as family, and not as a burden." The next morning, she put on her best thick coat. The mirror reflected a tired but determined woman. 66 years of struggle etched in every wrinkle. "Let's go, Carmen," she said to herself. "It's time to claim your place." The cold breeze of the Toluca Valley bit her face as she waited for the bus. The small suitcase weighed less than she expected against her chest. She looked at the mountains in the distance, thinking of how many times she had postponed this trip for fear of being a nuisance. 4 hours later, Carmen saw the buildings of Mexico City through the bus window. Her heart raced. She got off at the bus station, looking for her son in the crowd. "Mom." The familiar voice made her turn around. Hugo was different. Grayer, more formal in his business suit. But the smile, it was the same as the boy in the photograph. "My son." Carmen let herself be hugged, smelling the expensive perfume he wore. In the car, on the way to the house, the silence was dense. Carmen clutched the bag of gifts. "How are the children?" she finally asked. "Growing fast. Martine is already in 2nd grade, and Lucia talks a lot." Carmen smiled. "And Ana Sofia?" Hugo sighed. "I'm working hard. This promotion at the company." He paused. "Mom, I need to warn you. We'll be busy with social commitments. This year's Posadas will be different." Carmen's heart sank. Different meant elegant, sophisticated. Different meant that perhaps she, with her calloused hands and simple Spanish, wouldn't fit in. "I see," she replied, looking out the window at the city lights. "I'll be happy simply being close." Hugo briefly touched her hand. "Everything will be fine, Mom. You'll see." Carmen nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. She realized that rebuilding ties would be harder than she had imagined, but she was there, she had made it. And as the car moved through streets decorated for Christmas, she decided she wouldn't give up. The Posadas lights shone in the distance, like the hopes in her mother's heart. Carmen pressed the embroidered sweater against her chest and prepared to fight for her place in the new life her son had built. The taxi stopped in front of the elegant building in Naucalpan. Carmen took a deep breath before going down the stairs, nervously adjusting the embroidered shawl over her shoulders. The doorman looked at her questioningly before announcing her arrival on the intercom. "Mom!" Ana Sofia opened the door with a studied smile. "Welcome to our home." She wore an impeccable silk suit, and her hair was perfectly styled, as if she had just left a hair salon minutes before. Suddenly, Carmen became aware of her own rough hands, and the simple dress she had chosen with such care. "What a beautiful place," murmured Carmen, as she contemplated the exquisitely minimalist decorated apartment. The colorful piñata lights hanging from the ceiling created an almost ironic contrast with the sophisticated decoration. "Take this to protect yourself from the cold on the way." Ana Sofia offered her a steaming cup. Hot chocolate with extra. Cinnamon just as you like it. Carmen smiled, genuinely moved. Remembering, in the living room, Hugo remained absorbed in his cell phone, his fingers incessantly sliding across the screen. He looked up briefly. Mom, I'm glad you arrived safely. Please, sit down. He immediately returned to the device. Carmen pressed the cup between her fingers, seeking comfort in the warmth emanating from it. The aromas coming from the kitchen filled the room. Mole poblano, Christmas turkey, rice with raisins, reminding her of simpler times, when she cooked these same dishes in her humble kitchen in Tlaxcala. Carmen, we finally meet, a melodious and affected voice interrupted her thoughts. Doña Patricia, Ana Sofia's mother, entered the room as if she were parading. Her party dress, too elegant for a simple family gathering, sparkled under the Christmas lights. Her eyes surveyed Carmen's worn serape with barely disguised disdain. The pleasure is mine, replied Carmen, noticing how the woman barely touched her hand when shaking it. Don Roberto, a man of few words, followed his wife. He greeted Carmen with a handshake that was too firm. Anna told us you receive a government pension, he commented, as if talking about the weather. It must be difficult to keep up with that, huh? Carmen felt her stomach tighten. I manage well, thank you. Let's eat, Ana Sofia interrupted with a slightly high-pitched voice. Everything is ready. At the table, the silence weighed more than the elaborate Christmas turkey. Carmen observed carefully, Hugo still surreptitiously checking his cell phone under the table. Ana Sofia served the food with hands that subtly trembled. Doña Patricia commented on the quality of the French cutlery. Don Roberto talked about investments as if everyone present understood the financial market. Mom, tell me about Tlaxcala, Hugo asked, finally putting away his cell phone. How are things going there? Before she could answer, Hugo's phone rang. He looked at the screen and stood up. I have to take this. I'm sorry. Carmen noticed the look of disapproval that Ana Sofia directed at her husband, quickly disguised with a smile. More rice pudding, Carmen? Offered Anna, serving without waiting for a response. It's my grandmother's recipe. It's delicious, replied Carmen, noticing that the plate was already full. But it's too much. Nonsense, exclaimed Doña Patricia. Ana always overdoes portions. I suppose it's a middle-class legacy. In my family, we learned moderation from an early age. An uncomfortable silence descended on the table. Carmen saw Ana Sofia stiffen and grip the linen napkin tightly. In my family, Carmen began slowly. We learn to be grateful for abundance when it comes because we know scarcity well. Doña Patricia cleared her throat, disconcerted. Don Roberto looked at his watch for the third time. Hugo returned with a worried look. Problems at the office. Nothing serious. On Christmas Eve? Carmen couldn't contain the question. Markets don't stop, Mom, he replied, in a tone suggesting she would never understand that world. Ana Sofia got up abruptly. I'm going to get more sweet bread. In the kitchen, Carmen found her breathing deeply, with her hands resting on the marble countertop. Are you okay, daughter? Anna turned, surprised. For an instant, her mask of perfection fell. Everything is perfectly fine, as always, she replied. But her tearful eyes contradicted her words. Returning to the room, Carmen observed the scene with new eyes. Polite but cold smiles, like plastic garlands. Empty conversations about topics that don't touch. The heart, her son, distant like a star in the winter sky. The colorful piñata on the ceiling swayed gently with the current of air from the ventilation system, solitary in its artificial joy. Carmen felt the weight of truth in her chest. She was more alone there, surrounded by that family of smiling strangers, than in her empty house in Tlaxcala. Dawn came with the softness of a sigh, pouring a pale light through the silk curtains of the apartment. Carmen woke to the sound of muffled voices coming from the kitchen. She remained motionless, eyes closed, listening to the whispers that escaped like snakes through the crack in the door. Mom, please speak more quietly, Ana Sofia whispered, urgently. She might wake up. Patricia's response was full of impatience. That old woman sleeps like a log. Years of manual labor do that to a person. Carmen felt her heart tighten, but remained still, breathing slowly. Patricia's phone rang, and she answered in her mellifluous socialite voice. Ah, Dr. Ramirez. Yes, we are considering that nursing home in Coyoacan. No, it's not a matter of money. Her voice lowered even more. This miserable pension doesn't even cover a nurse. But the land in Tlaxcala, well located as it is, would solve everything. Carmen felt the blood freeze in her veins. She gripped the sheet between her fingers as Patricia continued. Of course she doesn't need to know everything now. When she's settled in, we'll explain that it was for her own good. At 66, alone in that remote place, it's practically abandonment. A cup clinked against a saucer. Ana Sofia's voice, normally controlled, sounded shaky. It would be better to take the little house in Tecamac before Mom gets seriously ill. At least that way we would have control over everything, added Patricia. Exactly what I told the lawyer yesterday. It's a matter of patrimonial security. Carmen sat up in bed, breathing heavily. 40 years in that adobe house. 40 years of sweat, sacrifices, and memories. The small garden where she planted her herbs. The kitchen where she had prepared thousands of meals for Hugo when he was a child. The room where she kept every letter, every photograph, every small piece of the life she had built. And now, for those women, it was just well-located land. A property to liquidate, like selling an old piece of furniture. She got up in silence, dressing with trembling hands. Through the crack in the door, she saw Hugo sitting in the living room, absorbed in work papers, completely oblivious to the conspiracy developing just a few meters from him. Or perhaps he knew it all. Coffee. Dear? Ana Sofia's voice startled her. She was standing at the bedroom door, holding a steaming cup. Her smile seemed carved in wax. Thank you, daughter. Carmen accepted the drink, avoiding looking her daughter-in-law directly in the eyes. Would she be able to hide the pain of the betrayal she had just discovered? At the breakfast table, conversations revolved around trivialities. The weather, the preparations for Christmas dinner, the city traffic. Carmen responded automatically, with her thoughts fixed on the words she had heard. Is everything okay, Mom? Hugo finally looked up from his documents. You seem very distant. Carmen forced a smile. I'm tired from traveling, son. Nothing important. During the day, she observed the family's movements as if she were watching a poorly rehearsed play. Patricia made calls in a corner, always lowering her voice when Carmen approached. Ana Sofia showed exaggerated solicitude, offering tea and cookies every half hour. Hugo remained absent, even when physically present. At night, after everyone had gone to bed, Carmen sat in the dim light of the living room, looking at the Christmas tree lights that shone like artificial stars. The metallic garlands reflected her aged face, fragmented into 1,000 pieces of gold and silver. She remembered the lonely nights in Tlaxcala, when distant carols pierced the cold air, and she lit candles to drive away not only the darkness, but also the loneliness. She thought of how many times she had dreamed of family moments like this, gathered with her son, imagining that she would finally no longer be alone. What a cruel irony. She had never felt so alone as now, surrounded by this family of smiling strangers. In silence, she returned to the guest room. She took a yellowed notebook from her bag and wrote with a trembling hand. Dear son, I had to return to Tlaxcala urgently. Your Aunt Lupita has had a relapse and needs me. I didn't want to wake you. I appreciate the hospitality. Merry Christmas. With love, Mom. She knew that Lupita, her only sister, had died 3 years before. Hugo probably didn't even remember. He was so removed from her life. But the lie would serve as an excuse for her sudden flight. She waited until dawn, when silence weighed like lead over the apartment. She dressed in silence, left the note on the kitchen table, and went out, closing the door carefully so as not to wake anyone. Outside, fog covered the streets of Naucalpan like a ghostly mantle. Christmas lights twinkled on the facades of houses and in the windows of closed shops, creating a dreamlike and melancholic scene. Carmen walked slowly until she found an available taxi. The driver, a gentleman approximately her age, looked at her curiously. Where can I take you, ma'am? To the bus station, please, Carmen replied with a broken voice. I'm going home. During the journey, she observed the sleeping city, the Christmas. Decorations now seemed to mock her with their artificial brightness and their empty promises of union and family love. Hours later, when she finally opened the door of her modest house in Tlaxcala, the familiar silence welcomed her like an old friend. Her plants, her walls, her simple furniture, everything was there, waiting for her. Nothing fake, nothing false. She sat in the old kitchen chair and finally allowed the tears to flow, hot and abundant. She cried because she had been so naive to believe she still had a place in her son's life. She cried for the cruelty disguised as concern. She cried for the lost time and destroyed hopes. But in the midst of tears, a resolution was born in her heart. She no longer wanted to be a hostage to false kindness. She would not give up the little she had achieved with so much sacrifice. Outside, in the distance, the sounds of the posadas began to awaken the neighborhood. Carmen dried her tears and looked out the window. The sky was beginning to clear, announcing a new day. "This house is mine," she murmured to herself, lovingly passing her hand over the worn wooden table. "And here I stay." New Year's Eve arrived, silent and cold, finding Carmen sitting on the floor of her living room, surrounded by dusty boxes. After weeks of isolation and reflection since escaping from Hugo's house, she decided to reorganize her memories, perhaps to better understand what remained of her life. Among old albums and yellowed letters, her hands found a leather case cracked by time. The zipper remained closed for a moment, as if protecting a treasure long forgotten. When it finally yielded, Carmen felt the air escaping from her lungs. "My old Canon," she whispered, reverently removing the camera. So many years. The Canon AE-1, a gift from her late husband on her 30th birthday, rested in her hands like a sacred relic. She adjusted the viewfinder to her eyes, feeling the familiar fit against her face. There was no film, no batteries, but the simple gesture of framing the world through that lens awakened something she thought was dead. Carmen spent the whole night looking at old photographs. Indigenous faces captured at fairs in Oaxaca, children smiling under woven palm hats, elderly people with wrinkles deep like furrows in the earth. It had been more than a hobby. It had been her way of narrating the Mexico she loved, of preserving the ephemeral. "Why did you give it up?" she murmured to herself. The answer came like a painful echo. For Hugo, for work, for survival. When fireworks announced the arrival of the year 2025, Carmen was standing by the window with the camera hanging from her, neck like an amulet. Colored lights exploded in the sky, reflecting on her aged face. "This year will be different," she promised herself. The next morning, with renewed determination, she headed to the community center in Puebla. The faded poster at the entrance announced, "Photography 101, open enrollments." Carmen hesitated only a moment before pushing the door open. The young receptionist raised her eyebrows as she watched her fill out the form. "Are you sure you want to enroll, ma'am? It's a very technical course." Carmen looked up from the newspaper, a spark of defiance shining in her gaze. "Young lady, I was taking pictures when you were still in your priest's minds." The classroom was small, with modest equipment, but to Carmen it seemed like a palace of possibilities. She sat timidly in the last row, watching other students arrive, all at least 20 years younger than her. "Is this seat taken?" A gray-haired man with an upright posture pointed to the chair next to her. He must have been about 70 and wore an impeccably ironed shirt. "No, go ahead," Carmen replied. "Don Esteban Velázquez," he introduced himself, extending his hand. "Retired architect and now aspiring photographer." "Carmen Alvarado," she smiled, feeling the unusual comfort of a sincere introduction. A small, energetic lady joined them, placing a colorful bag on the table. "Are you referring to the club? I'm Lucia Martinez, former rural teacher. They told me the Corn Lens Club meets here." Carmen looked confusedly at Esteban, who laughed softly. "That's what we call our main student group," he explained, "because we see the world through something more than our experience." The arrival of the professor interrupted the introductions. Mr. Fernandez was a robust man, with calloused hands and perceptive eyes, who had witnessed decades of history through a lens. "Photography," he began without preamble, "is not capturing images. It's capturing the soul of a moment that will never return." Carmen felt a shiver run down her spine. It was exactly what she had always believed, what she had always sought in her old photographs. The following weeks passed in a whirlwind of activity. Carmen relearned the basics, adapting to new digital technologies, sometimes frustrated, other times amazed. The Corn Lens Club became her refuge, a space where age was synonymous with perspective, not limitation. "You have a special eye, Carmen," commented Mr. Fernandez, examining her first digital photographs. "You see what others overlook." During a class on equipment, the professor mentioned a semi-professional camera. "It's not the best, but for advanced beginners, it's perfect." That night, Carmen made calculations in her worn notebook. The pension barely covered her basic needs. But next to her bed, the old Canon seemed to encourage her to take the risk. 3 days later, she left the store with a racing heart and a box under her arm. The saleswoman had smiled condescendingly when she asked to see the camera, but her expression changed when Carmen knowledgeably discussed the technical specifications. A gift for my granddaughter, Carmen lied as she signed the payment receipt that would last her 12 months. In the San Pedro market, she tested her new companion. For the first time, each lens adjustment, each frame provided her with an almost physical satisfaction. She captured vendors setting up fruit stalls, steam coming out of pozole pots, and children chasing pigeons between colorful stalls. "Would you take a picture?" "Of me, ma'am?" asked a girl holding a rag doll. Carmen bent to her level. "What shall I call you, little one?" "Esperanza," the girl replied with a toothless smile. The click of the camera preserved that smile forever. When she showed the image on the digital screen, the girl laughed delightedly. "I look pretty." "You are beautiful," Carmen gently corrected. When she returned home, her legs ached from the long day of walking, but she didn't even notice the discomfort. For the first time in years, she felt a different shiver running through her body. Not the shiver of loneliness or abandonment, but the beneficial shiver of excitement, of anticipation. At the small kitchen table, she connected the camera to the old laptop that Hugo had left during one of his rare visits years ago. The images appeared on the screen, one after another, each telling a story, each carrying a piece of Carmen's soul. "This is what I always wanted to do," she whispered to herself as her tearful eyes looked at the photo of Esperanza. At that moment, she realized she had found not only a hobby, but a purpose. The phone rang, breaking the charm of the moment. She hesitated before answering. It could be Hugo, questioning her sudden departure. It could be Ana Sofia, with more elaborate excuses. It was Lucia, her companion from the Corn Lens Club. "Carmen, Mr. Fernandez has signed us up for a photography contest. You have to participate." A contest. The idea should have frightened her, but instead she felt a wave of excitement. "What's it about?" she asked, already imagining possibilities, framing, stories to tell, faces of Mexico. "Doesn't that seem perfect?" Perfect, thought Carmen. As if the universe were conspiring in her favor, offering her the opportunity to reconnect with her essence through the lens. That night she slept with the camera next to her, pillow, like a child with a precious new toy. She dreamed of vibrant markets, expressive faces, and stories waiting to be told. And for the first time in a long time, there was no room in her dreams for Hugo's rejection or Ana Sofia's intrigues. The world beyond her family had opened up again, vast and colorful, inviting her to explore it frame by frame, moment by moment. Carmen Alvarado, at 66, was no longer just a lonely widow or an abandoned mother. The corridors of the Casa de la Cultura pulsated with life and anticipation. Carmen walked nervously among the exhibited photographs, each telling silent stories of Mexico. Her own work, a sunset in San Miguel de Allende, where dramatic shadows danced on the cobblestones of the central plaza, occupied a prominent place. "Look, there's the photographer," whispered a voice, and Carmen turned, surprised to find a small group of people observing her with amazement. Don Esteban approached, impeccable in his gray suit. "I tell you, Carmen, you work with your heart." Lucia, always vibrant in her colorful fabrics, squeezed her arm. "We're making history, friend. The Corn Lens Club is conquering Puebla." The buzz grew louder when the gallery director took his place in the center of the room. Carmen felt her legs weaken as she heard her name among those awarded with honorable mention. "For capturing the essence of the Mexican soul in a moment of perfect light," declared the judge, handing her a framed certificate. That night, Carmen could barely sleep. The words of recognition resonated in her mind like a lullaby long forgotten. 3 days later, when she visited the market to do her usual shopping, she saw her face in the regional newspaper. "From tamale vendor to artist," proclaimed the headline. She bought a copy with trembling hands and read it, sitting on a bench in the plaza, while silent tears ran down her wrinkled cheeks. Mrs. Carmen Alvarado, 66, who for decades supported her family by selling tamales, finds her artistic voice through photography. The phone rang in the mid-afternoon. Hugo's number made her heart skip a beat. "Mom, I just saw the newspaper. Why didn't you tell me anything?" Carmen hesitated, remembering the last time she had seen him. The farewell note, the whispered words, between Anna and Patricia. "I didn't want to bother you with my little things," she finally replied. "Little things? You're in the newspaper. This is incredible." Hugo's voice sounded genuinely impressed. "I always assumed you had talent, but this is extraordinary." The praise warmed a corner of her heart that she thought was frozen forever. "Thank you, son. I'll visit you this weekend," he announced. "I want to see these photographs up close." On Saturday, Carmen prepared special tamales, Hugo's favorites since childhood. When the doorbell rang, she nervously adjusted the embroidered shawl over her shoulders. Hugo was alone, without Ana Sofia, without the children. He felt different, less polished, more authentic. "Mom." He hugged her for a long time. "Forgive me for not being there, for not seeing you." She led him inside, pointing timidly at the framed photographs that now decorated the modest walls of her living room. "This is true art," murmured Hugo, examining each image with genuine attention. "You capture something that not everyone can see." Sunday brought another unexpected visit. Ana Sofia appeared alone, impeccably dressed as always, but with a less rehearsed smile than usual. "Congratulations on the award," she said, handing over a bouquet of flowers. Her eyes scanned the room, stopping at the photographs. "Hugo told me everything. You must be very proud." As Carmen prepared coffee, she heard Ana on the phone from the balcony. "Yes, Mom. I'm at her house. No, it doesn't seem like much money. Just an honorable mention. But there's interest from some galleries." The calculating tone was unmistakable. Carmen placed the cups on the tray, breathing deeply to contain her disappointment. Some things didn't change. "Ana," she called as she returned to the room. "Do you want to see my new project?" She showed her the laptop, where a simple page announced, "Carmen's Visions, Photographs for the Soul." A small online store, created, with Lucia's patient help, where her prints were for sale at modest prices. "We've already sold 17 copies, she declared with quiet pride. The cafes in Coyoacan bought entire series to decorate their walls. The gleam in Ana's eyes subtly changed. Surprise, recalculation, perhaps a flash of respect. "It's impressive, mother-in-law." In the following weeks, Carmen's life acquired an intoxicating rhythm. Smaller exhibitions, growing online sales, workshops she began to teach for other seniors at the Casa de la Cultura. Each small success solidified her confidence. Each new admirer validated her vision. When the envelope arrived, with the logo of the Mexico City Photography Festival, Carmen had to sit down to open it. "Dear Mrs. Alvarado, we have the honor of inviting you to exhibit your work in our New Visions section. 5 works. 5 opportunities to show her Mexico to the world, right in the heart of the Zócalo, the beating heart of the capital." She chose carefully the award-winning sunset, a portrait of Doña Esperanza selling colored ribbons, the elongated shadows of pilgrims in a centennial church, children playing under the summer rain, and, after much hesitation, the wrinkled face of an old woman weaving, her hands telling, stories that words could never express. Hugo insisted on accompanying her to the inauguration. "It's an important moment, Mom. I want to be by your side." The festival transformed the plaza into a kaleidoscope of visions and voices. Carmen, in her best cotton dress and a silk shawl she had bought especially for the occasion, felt both out of place and perfectly in her place. "Mrs. Alvarado," a young critic asked her, "your photographs capture an authentic Mexico without artifice. How do you achieve such brutal honesty?" Carmen smiled, thinking of the years of invisibility, the nights selling tamales, the calloused hands that now delicately adjusted lenses. "I see with my heart," she replied simply. "And the heart never lies." Admirers gathered around her. Hugo watched from a distance, visibly proud, as she explained techniques and inspirations, answering questions with a confidence he never imagined she possessed. That night, back in the small hotel where they were staying, Carmen looked out the window at the city lights. She remembered the girl she had been, the young mother who had sacrificed her dreams for her son, the invisible woman she had become. "Mom," Hugo broke the silence, sitting next to her. "There's something I need to tell you." She waited, feeling that something important was about to come. "Ana and we're separating. Things haven't worked for a long time." Carmen took his hand, surprised not by the news itself, but by the vulnerability in his eyes. "I'm sorry, son. I really am sorry." "Don't be," he said, squeezing her hand. "Sometimes we need to lose something to appreciate what really matters." Hugo paused and looked at the photographs displayed on the hotel bed, copies of the works that had been exhibited that day. "You never stopped creating, seeing beauty, even when life was hard. This is the most important lesson you could give me." Carmen didn't respond immediately. She thought about how photography had given her back not only purpose, but also voice and autonomy. She thought about the irony that it was now, at 66, when she finally felt seen. Really seen. For the first time in decades. It's never too late to start again, she finally said, both for him and for herself. Outside, the city lights shone like earthly stars. Carmen felt a wave of intense gratitude for the life she had lived, for every difficulty that had shaped her, for every moment of pain that had sharpened her vision. Free from the shadow of dependency, free from the fear of abandonment, free to be simply Carmen, artist, storyteller, woman complete in herself. Tomorrow, she told Hugo, I'll teach you to see the world through a lens. It's time you learned to really focus. And she knew, with absolute certainty, that she was just beginning. Chapter 6. Battle of Wills and Hearts. The success of the exhibition at the photography festival transformed Carmen's life. Orders for prints arrived daily, cafes and small galleries sought her work, and her bank account finally breathed with ease. Sitting in her small room, organizing negatives and memory cards, she felt rejuvenated. The phone rang, interrupting her work. It was Hugo, with an animated voice. Mom. Anna and A. I want to celebrate your success. We're organizing a special dinner this weekend. Carmen hesitated. The last family celebration had revealed plans to usurp her house. Who will be there? Just us. Anna, me, the children, and you, of course. The guest of honor. She decided to accept. Hugo's apartment seemed different, more welcoming, less ostentatious. The children ran to hug her, proudly showing their grandmother's photographs that now decorated their walls. During dinner, the conversation flowed naturally until Hugo cleared his throat, exchanging glances with Anna. Mom, we have news. We found a perfect apartment in Polanco. More space for the children, close to good schools. He paused, gathering courage. We need help with the down payment. We thought that, since you now have success with photography. Carmen carefully put down her fork. How much do you need? 1,200,000 pesos, Anna quickly replied, as if she already had the number on the tip of her tongue. Carmen smiled serenely. I'm sorry, children. I can't help you. Silence fell heavily on the table. Hugo seemed genuinely surprised, as if he had never considered a refusal. But Mom, I thought you were more comfortable now. I feel more comfortable, yes. And I intend to stay that way. Carmen took a sip of water. I've worked all my life to have the little I have. This is the first time I can really build something for my future. Anna intervened with a honeyed voice. Carmen, we understand perfectly. But it's also an investment, for the good of the family. Family, repeated Carmen, looking deeply into her daughter-in-law's eyes. It's curious how family only remembers me when they need something. The following Sunday, a lunch at Hugo's in-laws' house brought a new attempt. Doña Patricia, elegant as always, brought her brother, a businessman with an artificial smile and well-manicured hands. Carmen, I have an extraordinary proposal, Patricia announced during dessert. Roberto is expanding his real estate business. An investment of 2 million pesos can generate exceptional profitability in just a few months. We're buying land in Tijuana that will triple in value, added the brother-in-law, showing photos of a vacant lot. It's a unique opportunity. Carmen observed the faces around the table, the barely disguised anxiety of Anna, the visible discomfort of Hugo, the transparent greed in Patricia's eyes. It's an interesting proposal, she responded calmly. But I already have other plans for my resources. What plans could be better? Patricia asked, showing irritation. Carmen opened her purse and took out a folder. I just signed a contract for a photographic expedition. I'm going to capture the northern lights in Alaska in February. The surprise on the faces around the table was almost comical. Hugo choked on his coffee. Alaska? In February? Mom, are you crazy? The cold, the long trip. I'm 66 years old, son, not 100. And I remind you that I worked outdoors for decades. Carmen put the folder away. It's a childhood dream that I can finally fulfill. 2 weeks later, while preparing equipment for a workshop she was teaching, Carmen suddenly felt dizzy.